No.
Sean,
Hang on a second.
I hear you on your show all the time.
No, hang on a second.
Out, and the only time we get mad at you is when you waffle and tread backwards, and suddenly
I'm not treading backwards. I've never had my foot on the accelerator more than I do now.
Freedom is back in style. Welcome to the revolution.
'Cause we'll put a boot in your ass. It's the American way.
This is the Sean Hannity Show.
All right, thanks, Scott Shannon. Glad you are with us. Write down our toll-free telephone number. You want to be a part of the program. It's 800-941-SEAN. To join us, Hannity.com for all the latest info on what's happening in the world. Ann Coulter is back. What is destined to be another huge mega bestseller. And the latest title of her latest book, I think one of the more frightening covers she's ever had. The back cover's fine because it's a picture of Coulter. It's called Demonic: How the Liberal Mob is Endangering America. Mrs. Coulter, welcome back, and glad to have you back.
Oh, I'm so happy to be here, Sean. As you know, I've been researching and writing this book for the past 2 years, and right now, today, is the first time I can talk publicly about it. I don't have to wait for Good Morning America tomorrow to get this. Well, obviously you have to read the book, but the point of the book is that liberals are a mob. Look at how they talk about, to this day, FDR, JFK, Clinton, Obama. They're all rock stars. They're Jesus. They're the Beatles. They're Elvis. Conservatives don't do this. And in point of fact, Reagan's first year in office, he wasn't even the most popular conservative. He was number 3.
That was a great point in the book. I actually, when I compared that, I call it Obama mania, but you're jumping the gun a little too fast because you're racing through.
You have to get into the mob psychology to understand what demonic means. And then just quickly let me say, then I go through the history of mobs and contrast quite markedly the French Revolution and the American Revolution, which the liberals always want to make it sound like it's the same. No, the French Revolution was a mob revolt. It inspired the revolution in Russia, in Cuba, in Cambodia, in China. It has nothing to do with with the American Revolution, and in fact, it didn't lead to freedom. It didn't lead to a republic. After 4 years of barbarity and desecrating Notre Dame and hacking priests to death, the French threw themselves into the arms of a dictator. From a dictator, they had another monarchy. Then they had another dictator, then another monarchy. It took them 80 years to achieve a republic. And by the way, all of the instigators of their revolution died within 4 years being guillotined. All of the instigators of our revolution died peacefully in their sleep and instantly established a republic. Well, those are two very different paradigms. And curiously, the successful revolution, the American Revolution, isn't the one that gets followed around the country by filthy revolutionaries. It's the French Revolution, the mob revolt, because it gives all of the power to a select small group of individuals. And I guess if you get to be king, if you get to be dictator, if you get to be Robespierre, it's a lot of fun. It's not so much fun to be a subject of one of these bloody mob revolts. Then I go through the history of literal mobs as opposed to the psychological mob here in America, and how the violence has always come from the left. They like street theater. They like, look, right today on the Drudge Report, we have some Swiss liberal politician wants to stage a citizen's arrest of Henry Kissinger. These are always done by liberals. There's always violence, a threat of violence. I go through the Weatherman, SDS. I have a revisionist history to their revisionist history of the civil rights movement, which was, of course, Republicans. From the Civil War right up to and including the 1964 Civil Rights Act, it was always Republicans pushing black civil rights. It was always Democrats obstructing black civil rights. For the first time, thanks to Republican voting rights acts, blacks started voting in large enough numbers that by around 1964, the Democrats look at blacks as just another mob to appeal to. That's a voting bloc now. And then, of course, civil rights become a racket, and it basically goes downhill from 1964. So I have that, and then the concluding part is how mobs are always dangerous. They can go from 0 to 100 in an instant, as it did in the 60s, but Nixon shut it down. That you have the mob psychology that leads to actual mobs here in America. I mean, look at the fact that they keep claiming, the threat of violence from the Tea Party. Well, what they have is the threat. What we have is actual violence against us at the Tea Parties, at the Obamacare rallies. The only violence has been committed by liberals. The violence against Karl Rove, against George Bush, against John Bolton, against any of us who go and speak at college speeches. Liberals don't have to put up with that. Now, we're not at the stage we were in the 60s, but that can happen very quickly. And the reason, not only do I is the first part important to understand why it's so difficult to talk to liberals, and they're always talking in images and slogans, and you can never get through to them because they're always, rallying the crowd at the Finland station. But it is a warning to conservatives and all peaceable Americans that mobs cannot be reasoned with. You have to overreact with a mob, because with a mob the slippery slope is always true. They can go from speaking in slogans to storming the barricades, smashing windows, assassinating presidents in no time.
You're right. They not only did they vote Connor out of office when he ran for mayor, and are you absolutely right that he was a vicious pro-union Democrat, DNC committee member from Alabama. He was a racist, and he was endorsed by the segregationist governor, George Wallace. All of that you put in the book, and all of that is true. Here's the only thing that as you're describing this mob, you sort of, to me, make the case, or you do make the case, that MLK, that it was wrong for him to protest the presence of Connor, which resulted in these television crews and these images that we see to this very day when Connor turned fire hoses and police dogs on little children, and these kids were as young as 6 years old. And the line you used that bothered me was King had stoked this incredible fire to ignite his dying movement. And you said King and the Southern Christian Leadership Conference were overjoyed at the mayhem that they had caused. And I agree, Martin Luther King.
Yes.
And wait, hang on, let me finish this point. Hosea Williams, who I got to know, Andrew Young, all these guys, Joseph Lowery, disagree with their politics, but I admire their courage and bravery to take all this on. And the fact is, what they were fighting for was this resistance by individuals. This is why church-going people showed up and fought for what was their constitutional rights.
My point is about the methods. And by the way, the reason Thurgood Marshall's court victories. I mean, he won Brown versus Board of Education in 1954. The reason there was a little lagging in enforcing it was, of course, because of Democrat politicians appealing to the racist mob. They're always figuring out where the mob is and jumping in front of it. We had Democrat presidents between, Eisenhower and Nixon, and suddenly you stop getting actual enforcement. When after Brown versus Board of Education, you have Eisenhower sending in the National Guard. That's what a Republican president does. When Nixon came in, he desegregated Southern schools overnight. In 1 year, he had accomplished more school desegregation than the Democrats had before or since.
But explain to me how it is a president could be so close to Bernardine Dohrn and Bill Ayers and one question during an entire presidential campaign about that relationship.
No, that's a great question. And what I would say is that is the modern Democratic Party. I mean, you had Tom Hayden running for office just as, respectable Democrat. You had a lot of these crazed radicals engaging in mob protests, property destruction, murder, not on behalf of a good cause like civil rights, but on behalf of hating America and hating their parents and citing, the Manson family and so on. And they have completely been embraced into the modern Democratic Party, which is why I also, in the chapter on civil rights, go through the nonsense about the Republican Southern strategy and, how we scooped up the South by appealing to racial bigotry.
All right, we're going to continue this tonight on Hannity. Ann Coulter, it's always a pleasure. Thanks so much for being with us.
Great to talk to you, Sean. Thanks.
All right, 800-941-SEAN is our toll-free telephone number.
Sean Hannity.